Good evening.
Good evening.
It's wonderful to see so many people showing up in celebration and support of all those that are receiving awards tonight. So we will start this evening. Linda, could you give the invocation?
In Lamentations, chapter 3, verses 22 and 23, it says, "The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end, and they are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness, Lord." In Isaiah 43, 18 and 19, in the Message Bible, it says, "Forget about what's happened. Don't keep going over old history. Be alert. Be present. I'm about to do something brand new. It's bursting out. Don't you see it? There it is. I'm making a road through the desert, rivers in the Badlands." Thank you, Father, that your love is steadfast and everlasting. Thank you that you're merciful without end, and you give us new mercies every day. Thank you that you are true, constant, and devoted to us no matter what. Thank you, Father, for a brand new year, a new beginning. We agree not to remember our past or our past behaviors or think on what we did, but we receive what you have for us today, a new thing. Father, release the plans you have for our city council members into this new year. Open up strategies, projects, and designs, and help us implement these visions for our community and bring in workers and finances to see these visions accomplished this year. Lord, let this be to your glory. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Linda. So now we'll officially call this meeting to order. Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll?
Mayor Miller,
Here.
Alderpersons Borneman, McClanathan, Ross,
Here.
Parker,
Here.
Busker,
Here.
Brashaw, Mysick,
Here.
and Berberay.
Here.
And could you please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance led by Alderman Berberay? Item number 1 is approval of the agenda. However, we will be removing from number 23, the executive session, part number 21. So is there a motion for the approval of the agenda?
So moved. Second. Art.
We have a motion made by Alderman Ross, seconded by Alderman Berberay for the approval of the agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. Item number 2 is the approval of the minutes from the regular meeting on January 6th, 2020. Is there a motion for that approval?
So moved. Second it.
We have a motion made by Alderman Parker, seconded by Alderman Ross. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. And we have one person signed up for public comments. Jim Hutchison, if you could please go to the podium. Thank you. And you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll set my timer. I'd like to share some information about 5G, mainly from the Building Biology Institute, which started in Germany 40 years ago. It's been in the United States for 31 years. 5G describes fifth-generation cellular technology being introduced in the coming decade of the 2020s. It is not 5.8 gigahertz, a Wi-Fi and cordless telephone frequency used for years. Over time, 5G antennas broadcasting in the super 20 gigahertz millimeter wave band above 20 gigahertz would be deployed. These super 20 gigahertz 5G antennas are proposed to be mounted at existing 4G macro cell tower sites, as well as many small cell tower antenna arrays closer to home and in public places. This new technology would include many elements under development for decades. On-demand beamforming to reduce interference between an increased number of data connections to allow 5G signals to penetrate buildings. Specifically, 5G proposes to bring 3G, 4G, Wi-Fi, and new 5G antennas closer to people. The health effects of chronic exposure to all cellular, voice, and data transmissions at any frequency and any generation are known to be harmful to all life, cumulatively over time and at close range. Exposure to 5G signals at sub 6 gigahertz and super 20 gigahertz bands are expected to accelerate the onset of ill health in pets, people, native animals, insects, and plants in the biosphere, which are already under assault by radio frequency transmitted by 3G and 4G technology. Those who have developed microwave sickness, also known as electromagnetic sensitivity, are particularly vulnerable. It is interesting to note that India, Russia, Belgium, and other countries have even lower human exposure limits than the United States. Signals from 5G transmitting above 20 gigahertz can only penetrate into homes if beamforming technology is used. They don't have meters to measure these super 20 gigahertz signals. Deployment is being challenged worldwide by an ever-increasing number of activists and advocates who are making progress for municipalities to delay or block implementation. The health effects of 5G technology need to be fully and impartially studied before deployment of any new 5G technology, especially close to where people live and in public spaces. I would urge for further consideration to this subject. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Since there are no other public comments, we'll move on to item number 4, which is the consent agenda. The consent agenda is considered to be routine in nature unless there's a member of the council who would like to have something removed for further discussion. Is there anything, council? Seeing none, the consent agenda consists of A, approval and placing on file the appointment for Lowell Crow to the Soil and Water Conservation District Board, the 2020 calendar for regular meetings for boards and commissions that have been updated. Number 3 is the Liquor Commission minutes from November 14th, 2019, the Board of Police and Fire Commission special meeting minutes from March 26, 2019, the Library Board minutes from September, October, and November 2019, as well as the approval of the resolution R 2020-02 for the temporary closure of streets for the annual Memorial Day parade that is set for Monday, May 25th, 2020. And the cash and investment report from December 31st, 2019, and the approval of finance bills payable in a total of $1,515,301.61, and the approval of payroll for pay period ending January 4th, 2020, in a total of $596,225.05. Is there a motion for the approval of the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion made by Alderman Busker, seconded by Alderman Brashaw. Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll on the passage of the consent agenda?
Berberay.
Aye.
Borneman.
Aye.
McClanathan.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
Busker.
Aye.
Brashaw.
Aye.
And Meiseck.
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0.
Thank you very much. Item number 5 is presentation for recognition of employees. Manager Crow.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I hope I keep my voice. I'm going to call up each one of the department heads too. So we'll start with the library. So this year the library had 2 award winners, Amanda Myers and Diane Ludwood. You come forward. So. Should be. No, I think you just turned it off. Oh. Technology.
Hello. Is it still? Oh, there we go. Okay. Do you guys want to come over here and look that way? Okay. So Diane, right here, is the adult service manager. And it's okay. I'm just gonna yell. And Amanda is the youth services manager. So every week, and I'm the library director. So every week I hear so many wonderful things, wonderful comments about how I, as the library director, am making so many great improvements to the Freeport Public Library. I wouldn't be hearing this as much as I do without these two people, Amanda and Diane. They are so integral to our team. In the fall of 2018, Amanda and Diane brought 30 years of professional library experience to Freeport. They came here and transformed the library both inside and outside the walls of the building. They dedicate many hours to outreach and engaging library patrons throughout the community. What is a true measurement of their success is how they receive their awards. Our team voted, and it was a well-earned tie. Honestly, there is no choosing between these two. They jumped in during a year of transition and are the embodiment of all in, constantly empowering the library staff to be the best public service agents we can be. Not every day is easy. Some days are really, really hard. But these two inspire their teams to be their best every day. And finally, I cannot end this small speech without extending my pure and genuine gratitude. I cannot do what I do without you, Amanda and Diane, on my team. I'll never be able to put into words how grateful I am to have two strong, confident, passionate, and dedicated librarians on our team. I look forward to continuing to serve the community of Freeport with both of you for years to come. Thank you, Diane.
There you go. And Amanda.
Thank you, Amanda.
And, all right, and I have boxes for you. So you. So, well, Brian Buck, come on up. Brian's our firefighter of the year.
Firefighter Book has been an outstanding member of our department for more than 10 years. Ryan serves the department as a firefighter paramedic, out-of-class lieutenant, and has been appointed as the Freeport Fire Municipal 17 Academic Coordinator. Firefighter Book demonstrates daily that he is a very skilled and capable firefighter paramedic for both our department and the citizens of Freeport. Book possesses an infectious, can-do attitude that's greatly appreciated by his officers. Book works well with his peers, by example, mentors new hires and gives the job the right, gets the job done right the first time, and with utmost professionalism and efficiency. Over the past year, Firefighter Book has worked very hard expanding and improving Freeport Fire and Municipal 17 hazardous materials team. He's been instrumental in bringing in numerous hazardous materials training opportunities here at Freeport. He's worked closely with the state of Illinois Davis Command staff to increase the number of deployable hazmat team members, and which in turn benefits our city and the region, but as we are considered whenever new equipment, distributions, and upgrades come available. Firefighter Book is a well-respected paramedic and leader in the department and a pleasure to work with. He's very deserving of becoming the Freeport Firefighter 2019 Firefighter of the Year.
Congratulations. Going together? So, Robin Stowell and June Dillman. Is June here? Come on up. Now, this is going to be a little like the Academy Awards, you know, where they get up, they read it and say, presented at the previous night. So they were presented their plaques at the party on Friday.
We actually awarded our two awards Friday night at our annual Christmas
So I don't know if both of them want to come up, but I want to, Scott is, this was a pleasure to award this from the Public Works, because Scott not only represents Public Works well, he is, when we're dealing with the local businesses, the large businesses, Scott actually represents me in dealing with them, in dealing specifically in all the issues we've had with snacking, keeping our MPDS permit going. So Scott is a great representative, and I want to say thank you, Scott. And I'll let Tom talk a little bit about you.
Okay, Scott, roughly this time last year, we had a similar moment of dedication to your 35 years. So now you're soon reaching 36 years. I believe there's only one other, or maybe two more boards that have overseen you then. But you came in as land manager. The steadfastness and the work that you do when you came in from day one, you do today. You look for efficiencies as far as costs or work procedures. You don't need to streamline. You go and as well as manager program, you look to go and be his representative, but then you also represent me, from time to time. And when you go and provide me with some recommendation, I mean, it's been thought through, and it's easy to go and implement after first review by me or review by me. You still have the dedication, and I hope to have you around for quite a few more years.
So one thing I will say that many people don't realize, that every time we have a main break during the week or weekend, Scott comes in to make sure that those are the waters are tested, and he sends out the notification. So he notifies, he works tirelessly coming in on the weekends and at night to make sure that those are, people can go back, the boilers can be lifted. Congratulations, Scott. Michelle Richter. Now, so Michelle was selected as the Employee of the Year. It was a close race, but she was nominated by not only the department heads, but her peers. And I'll let Randy talk a little bit about her.
One thing about the finance and human resources department, we're kind of the background, we don't rent out in the front public and everything. And that's where Michelle comes in, because through her work and keeping the financial records in order and answering questions all the department heads need, makes them look a lot better. Okay. She doesn't know something, she's not afraid to go out to find the answer or try something new. She's a true team player, and she's not afraid to take chances or try new ways. And that's one thing that we're always looking for, is innovation in our department, is trying to improve our processes and stuff. Her knowledge of governmental accounting has helped us to have no findings in our audits for the last couple of years, which is a good thing. We don't want the auditors to find some mistake or error that we made. And Michelle's been key to making sure that we don't have any findings. She's ways at spreadsheets, and she's even deciphered my spreadsheets that I have her cleaned up and look next to the presentation. She'll be a very important player and an asset as we go about finding our new software this year for the financial software and human resources and water utility building. So she's going to be playing a major part in that. I appreciate all that you do for the city, Michelle, and myself and our department. Congratulations on your award. Congratulations.
Now, come on down, Kurt. So this year's selection for Department Head of the Year was Kurt Sutman. This is 2 years in coming. Those that don't know, he's almost saved the city close to $350,000 to almost $400,000 over the last 2 years. When he came on board, we didn't have an IT department. He's created it. He's got the reason we're on Windows 10 everywhere. I think the police department was the last one that got on Windows 10. It was because of the work that Kirk did and establishing a need and a refresh program. He also identified we had, 35 cell phones that were still being activated that that were not being used. And when he went to turn those in this year, that was interesting. He was having, and then over 28 phone lines that were no longer being used. So he has entirely sought out new technologies to make it better. He's also improved the GIS mapping with what we're doing, and he is a true representative of the city.
Well, congratulations to each one of you. Well-deserved awards. Thank you. And next on the agenda is the report from the Greater Freeport Partnerships quarterly presentation. Gary Quinn.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity. We have just finished our first complete full year of operation as the Greater Freeport Partnership, and one of the things I learned this afternoon is that we finished that year with a 4% operating surplus. That may not mean anything, but it meant a great deal to us. It meant that the financial plans we put in place during 2017 and 18 were appropriate, accurate, and what I want to say to you is that next year you'll see a lot, well, this year, 2020, you'll see a lot of execution in areas of marketing and promotion and events that are in addition to what you've been used to seeing. We have also begun to accumulate and to put into formats that people can find great use for data and information to help everyone in their, let's say in their business management. Today, the use of information is probably more critical than ever. As an update, I want to say to you as well that there's a lot of genuine interest in the replacement of the executive director. We've had 26 applicants. They were from 10 states. We have vetted that group down to 8, and we'll go through another process to have a ED in place, we would hope, before the 1st of April. So that's something that I know is a continued interest. We, along with a lot of other partners, are engaged in an intensive effort to make sure that the census count this year is accurate and everyone is listed and counted that can possibly be counted, because there's so much of the funding and the allocations of resources that are dependent upon having an accurate count. So we're very pleased to share that with you. I want to say too to the council that in every way the city of Freeport has been a fantastic partner from day one. We enjoy the participation of the city manager at the board level. Whenever we have to interact with anybody at the city at any level, no matter the department, the response we get is strong and prompt and supportive, and we do not take that for granted. That is a real blessing. We also see inside the partnership an active and cooperative spirit between all of the governmental bodies. Frankly, I've been hanging around the edges of the government or the not-for-profit sector for 30 years, and I've never seen the cooperation and the involvement as healthy as it is right now. And again, I do not take that for granted. But every month we get to see the city and the county, the Highland Community College, District 145, and the Park District not only discuss but actively engage cooperatively. Another area that I want to make sure that proper, I guess, credit is given is we now have another E-zone. We have a new E-zone. That process took a year and a half. The application was 2,600 pages. And it was intensely done, but very cooperative, and we're glad to see that in place. It is one of the single best economic development tools we have. Couldn't thank you enough for your care and attention in putting into place a downtown revitalization loan fund. It's an innovative, creative way to stimulate and leverage investment. Pleased to tell you that we have 2 active applications right now. They are not ready to present for your consideration, but they're in the works. We have another one very strong game-changing application that is in our pipeline. We'll be hopeful that we can bring that to you yet in the second quarter this year. The partnership assisted 20 different entities with preparing grants this year. And in that effort as well, I might tell you that we also applied for 4 grants and were awarded 4 grants. So we were able to bring in new and rare money into this community to further our efforts. No secret to anybody in this room that the Visitor Center has operated for years with a very large structural deficit. And we were challenged by the city manager to address that, and we have done so. We have not eliminated it, but it is shrinking rapidly. The Visitor Center has different kinds of activities now. If you haven't been out there, well, I'd recommend it to your attention. The center last year welcomed about 16,000 to 17,000 different people. We're seeing a lot more involvement and participation, and I think impact from it. Attendance at the partnership events last year were up 20% across the board in every category. So we are continuing to progress, and I would again just thank you for your support and your partnership, and would invite any questions or comments or suggestions.
Mayor,
Alderman McClanathan.
first off, congratulations on with the 1 year. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your comments that you provided to us tonight and the updates. It's also good to hear that there's a good, healthy, and vibrant interaction between the GFP and the city, and that back and forth. And I'm confident that'll continue. I would just ask from a council standpoint, obviously, funding is, one of our things, but what, are there any areas going forward here over the next year and things of that nature in which the council can provide any additional benefit or support or to help continue to see improvement throughout this next year?
Candidly, at several levels inside the organization, we recognize that sales tax is an important issue for the county and the city. So at a foundational level, I think business development is always going to be a concern. New jobs are always going to be a concern. Pleased to tell you that there are at least 2 industrial employers that are planning some expansions. We're seeing and hearing more positive comments about incremental investment by our existing companies, and that's just very encouraging. I would also share with you that we have the same concerns that the council does about the continuation of the home rule. We see that as an elephant in the room, and we share that concern with you. We also are working in every way we know how to address what we believe are issues inside the whole EVA calculation and presentation, because I think that's impacting every single governmental unit. So these are things that are kind of at a foundational level for us. But in every way, we hope to help protect existing investment and attract incremental investment and just keep the health of our community strong.
Mayor,
Alderman Borneman?
thank you. I agree with Mr. McClanathan. We appreciate the work you do. You mentioned economic development. Maybe you're not familiar with this technology, but do you believe that if Freeport were to become a smart city or invest in 5G technology, that would be something that would help attract businesses?
Technology today it's a given, and I think having a fiber ring network is also non-negotiable. I think 5G is also going to be one of those things that will be an expectation going forward. Moving bits of information rapidly and safely and securely are going to be a priority for every business. It will be a continuing business for the largest employer here in town, which is your hospital. Telemedicine is not a blip. It's going to be a long-term trend. So information technology is crucial to every one of your employers here.
Thank you.
Mayor.
Alderman Ross?
Yes, Mr. Quinn. I just want to thank you for all the positivity you brought tonight, because there's not very little negative that you spoke about. And like you said, when you get back to the visitor center, well, it didn't get that way overnight, but, you know, I see that you got it, you're turning it around, so, you know, you're going up that ladder to make things better, and that's where the direction that we need to go here inside the city of Freeport. So I just thank you again for everything that you're doing, and we look forward to your next report.
I appreciate it. I just get to speak for some hard-working people, so I'm glad to represent them. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is the Housing Authority status report. Babette?
Good evening. I would first like to thank you all for allowing me this opportunity to provide you with an update on the status of the Housing Authority of the City of Freeport. And I will be as brief as possible, and my greatest hope is that if you have any questions that you will feel free to ask them either tonight or feel free to call me anytime because I am available. The first thing that I want to talk about, and I believe that the majority of you probably have either seen it, encountered it, or heard about it, and it was from the Edgar County Watchdogs. Edgar County Watchdogs actually shared, which based on their commitment to communities, they should have, but they shared our report from HUD. And the report pretty much outlined the fact that the Housing Authority of the City of Freeport is in troubled status. It has, the reality of it is that HUD actually grades us on a 100-point scale, and there are 4 different areas. The top tier, you have your high performers, and you have your standard performers. The lower tier, you have your substandard, and you have troubled. The Housing Authority has been in substandard status since 2015, and I don't think that that was shared very often, if at all, and the whole idea of when an organization hits that particular status is that an assessment will take place. I wasn't at the Housing Authority during that time. I do not know if an assessment had taken place, but in April of 2019, an assessment did take place. And I believe that most of the alder people have received a copy of that assessment, and I want to not review everything because it is several pages. But I do want you to take in consideration the fact that when an organization goes through an assessment like that, it is rated on what's considered a top performer. And as someone who entered the Housing Authority as the interim executive director and was faced with many challenges, it did take some time. And I think I heard someone say something similar to, things aren't going to change overnight, and things most certainly didn't change overnight. But also I will say that there was a time where a lot of things within the authority appeared to be a lot of glamour and glitz, but it didn't mean that it was necessarily gold, because it would not have spiraled so quickly if that were the case. So just to let you know what we're working on right now, based on that the four scales of what's considered FARS, which is just an organizational assessment of housing authorities. We have areas that we focus on. We're focusing on our management and operations, which gives us an opportunity to take a closer look and assess our occupancy and vacancy rates, tenant rent collection, as well as accounts payables. And that is our ability through our developments to be able to pay our bills and still have a bit of a cushion. We also had an opportunity to bring in a new fee accountant, and that new fee accountant is actually supporting the development of our policies and procedures as related to our financial condition. The Housing Authority did have some policies and procedures in place. Our ultimate goal when I came on as executive director was to update and upgrade those policies and procedures to ensure that there is complete transparency. We also, in 2018, conducted a special audit, or it's often referred to as a forensic audit. It wasn't a large-scale audit. It was something to complement the fact that we knew the organization needed to have more systems in place related to its financial management. In terms of the physical condition, you all are aware, and I'll talk a little bit about it later, we are submitting an application to HUD for the demolition of Parkside Apartments because of its location. Due to the location, HUD cannot continue to invest in a floodway. And so we will be completing that application for demolition, which will also include a relocation plan for the residents that are over there. But the physical conditions right now, although we're looking at the demolition of the Parkside Apartments and we're also looking at relocating those residents, we do have a number of upgrades and some renovation that needs to happen in what we call our Westview Apartments. Within the next couple of months, we will be doing a P&A, an assessment in that area to determine everything that needs to happen. Now, back in 2016, 2017, the Westview AMP was set up to go through a low income tax credit project, what we refer to as RAD. That was discontinued given all of the transition that occurred, but when that happened, it left us with a lot of vacant units and about 18 units that weren't in living condition. When it comes down to this assessment, the fact that we weren't able to turn those units, release those units because they're on sinking foundations, and there's a process to go through to take those units offline, it brought down our vacancy rate. Again, with this assessment, we've been able to work with HUD on a monthly basis. I think I probably conference call with them probably every other week. And we send them updates and information every month. But all of this contributes to the technical assistance that we are receiving that has been helpful, and it's definitely been necessary to keep HUD updated on all levels. And our capital area, which is the fourth area within the measures, pretty much we receive capital funds from HUD on an annual basis. We have an opportunity to contribute to the physical condition of our buildings. The capital fund was not obligated, but we're working on that process now. The obligation process what happens is that we will go through our procurement, we'll identify contractors to do particular work, and then we can manage our major projects based on our annual plan. So we do have an updated annual plan, and again, once we complete this final assessment, we'll be able to move forward with the work that we need to do based on that annual plan. The final thing that I do want to say related to the assessment, and there was a large area in that report related to governance. We have, and we are, putting special emphasis on developing and training our Board of Commissioners. When I started, we pretty much had a new board, but a new dedicated and committed board. We were doing some training during board meetings, but it wasn't substantial. Our ultimate goal is to make certain that each board member has the tools, they have the resources to make sound quality decisions as it relates to our finances, our management, our physical condition, as well as capital projects that we're planning for. And with that said, you know, we do have a work plan that I would be more than happy to share with you all or keep you updated on the progress that we're making in terms of fulfilling our commitment to our agreement with HUD on this work plan, as well as to turn around the fact that the Housing Authority of the City of Freeport right now is in troubled status, which doesn't mean that it's not impossible to turn that around. If I could say for certain we'd be a high performer by this time next year, I would, but I'll tell you, we will get close to it. The last thing that I'm going to mention is, again, going back to Parkside and the application. I'll be sending the application in next week to be reviewed by HUD. This will be an expedited process given the location of the development. And what we have established so far, because a lot of people, a lot of residents have a lot of questions. So we'll be sending out monthly written updates to all residents in that area. If you would like to see those updates, we'll be more than happy to share that with you as well. We also have scheduled monthly meetings. We'll send the updates a week before that meeting, and then when we have that meeting, that'll serve as reinforcement and education just in case any of the residents have any questions. Do you have any questions for me?
Mayor?
Alderman McClanathan.
Thank you. First off, thank you, Director, for being here. And I understand, obviously, when you look at a report like that, it's certainly a lot of things predated you, and I recognize that and acknowledge that. And it's an interesting dynamic in that with the housing obviously being a separate entity, what's the kind of the overlap here with the City of Freeport and this council? Mm-hmm. And it's largely through either the approval or denial of board members as they're nominated by the mayor. Mm-hmm. So in that context, though, we all have, I think, I don't know, I have to go through, but many of us have constituents that are in housing, and I'm no exception in regards to my ward. So while our level of interaction and overlap is somewhat narrow, I would appreciate the opportunity to kind of ask some follow-up questions in regards to some of the things that you've addressed and also were raised in the report. So in that light, I guess first with the board being our biggest area of oversight, you indicated that you're implementing some training. I know there's about 7 or 8 things that were laid out in governance regarding formal training, not lack of sufficient oversight, lack of awareness of the capital fund grants, monitoring of vacant statuses, sexual harassment and equal opportunity training, meetings canceled, things of that nature. What steps are being taken with the training that you were talking about that will give us as council members confidence that those issues are addressed?
The first thing, and I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice, but the first thing related to the training is that we are working on scheduling a retreat, which we will do every year, once a year. And right now, for the February board meeting, we'll be presenting a draft agenda of that retreat. This will give the board members a weekend. We're thinking about a weekend where we will bring in presenters either from other housing authorities, HUD, or some of the consultants that we use to focus on the areas of improvements that we need to see take place. Also, we are planning quarterly trainings for board members, particularly related to what we refer to as FOS, which is that 100-point scale of measurement in the management, financial, capital, and fiscal conditions of the organization. Now, the one thing that I will say, and that is when you do an assessment like we completed in August with HUD. HUD comes out for a week, and we had a few days' notice. I don't think that the board was given enough credit for the knowledge that they have, and not only the commitment, but very serious decisions that they've made. My board holds me accountable for information and education, and I stand firm and committed on being able to provide them with that. The management response, and I actually brought you all copies of what we sent to HUD, as well as the communication to the watchdogs. But the one thing that I will say, and I kind of lost my train of thought, and I apologize for that because so much want to come out right now. Okay. Well, in addition to the quarterly trainings, a board member, at least one board member, hopefully more than one board member, will be able to attend a national training. More likely it'll be a commissioner's training. We're going to try to focus on that training being in the upper Midwest. And once they attend that training, they will come back and they will also train their fellow commissioners as well. So what I would like to do is that in February, once we present our agenda for the year for training, that you all will get that final version of that. And fortunately, we do have a board member from the city on the board now, Michelle Richer, and I do look forward to her being able to provide us with the support necessary for the financial conditionings and the training that the board needs in that area. And I also want to say one thing, and I think that is very important, because I don't want to say some things from the assessment weren't true, but some things from the assessment, they weren't accurate. We don't close the agency at any given time, you know, and this was explained to HUD, and it was also, I believe it's also explained in the letter that you all will have the opportunity to review. But if there's anything that I did not answer in that area, please let me know, because I did try to provide a thorough answer to everything.
Follow up there? And thank you for that answer. And also, when I was making my initial remarks, I just want to acknowledge too, I know there was a lot of board members that were probably placed on the board after a lot of these issues that were kind of raised through there. So I acknowledge that as well. You had mentioned the work plan that I think you were saying was in response how you're going to be addressing a lot of these issues. Is that a public document?
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, we are planning probably by the end of this month, we'll have the work plan on our website, and we'll keep it updated on a regular basis for you all to see the progress that we're making.
Okay. Follow up, Mayor. Thanks. You had indicated at some point here over the last year or two there was a forensic audit. Was that completed? What's the status, or what's the takeaway that we can have in regards to the audit as it pertains to this report?
Yes, the forensic audit was completed, but it was left in draft form. And the reason it was left in draft form was to be able to, again, focus on the fact that we needed to use the information that was gathered to begin working on our policies. Not to mention, there was a lot of information, well, some information that was gathered that we did not have backup information for. So even though, and the reason why we didn't have it is because a lot of the stuff wasn't there. It was just no longer available, whether it was shredded, whether it was taken away, we didn't have it. So it was left in draft form. Now, it had been FOIA'd before, and based on our attorneys, we shared it the way we were advised to do so.
Follow up, Mayor? Just that last portion there kind of confused me a little. What do you mean you shared it? Did you mean by leaving it in draft form?
Yes.
On the advice of council? Like, and I realize they're separate entities, so you guys may operate under different rules. You know, when we go through an audit, eventually at some point, you know, it's finalized and made public. Can we anticipate at some point that will also be the same with this audit with you, or?
Yes, yeah, pending board approval, yes. Mm-hmm.
And also, I appreciate, again, I want to reiterate, I appreciate you being here and providing this report. Do you expect, like, on an annual basis, we'll probably have like an annual report to the council from housing?
Yes, I would like to be able to do that. I think that we also, I believe at one time there was a state of the housing authority. And, but I think that we owe it to the public to be able to do an annual update, as well as present our annual plan on a regular basis. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Mayor.
Alderman Ross.
Yes, ma'am. I do appreciate you being here there myself. One thing I'm going to ask you, since that the Housing Authority over in the 3rd Ward is the ward in which I'm in, I'm going to ask you if you could keep in contact with me, due to the fact that the residents, you know, they feel as if they know that it's the Housing Authority, but they come to me and say, well, what are we going to do? You know, and I says, well, you have to speak with the Housing Authority. But if I had some type of update or something like that to keep, try to keep them informed, keep myself informed, that would be great, because there's a lot of one-on-one.
Yeah.
No ifs, ands, or buts about that at all. Now, my second question is, now you were speaking about rewriting the policies and the procedures. I mean, did you rewrite them? Have you tackled that task yet or not?
We are revising policies and procedures. So there are several financial policies that we have revised that the board has approved, and they have been sent to HUD. There are other ones that we're still working on, because we've been working on the transition plan and gathering of a lot of information, as well as day-to-day. But as a part of our work plan, we do have a goal outlined in when we will have all of our, and I'm not certain if you're referring just to the financial policies, but we do have a deadline established of when we'll have all of the financial policies and procedures in place. But anything that was within that HUD assessment letter related to certain policies, those have been completed. They've been completed within the last year, and even after the assessment.
Okay, follow up here. Okay, now when you say you come to your board, how do you keep your, when your board have meetings, how do you keep track of what's at the meeting? I mean, do you tape record? Do you have somebody in there, somebody write notes, or how do you go about that?
Well, we run our board meetings just like, you know, anybody else run their board meetings. We use a tape recorder in closed session. I have an assistant who takes minutes, and we use Robert's Rules.
Robert's Rule. Okay, we know that's not accessible to the public, but you do keep record of that.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying. Okay. Now, when it comes to the 18 apartments, will they be revitalized, or will they just become empty, or what's going to happen?
The 18 apartments, and if I speak about it now, based on the condition, and they're on sinking foundations, which have been rebuilt before in the past, more likely we're going to create green space. It doesn't make any sense to keep building on in an area that continues to sink. So that's 3 buildings, and those 3 buildings is a total of 18 apartments.
And that's in the Westview?
That's in Westview.
Okay. Okay, that's all I have tonight. Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
Madam Mayor,
Alderman Bradshaw.
thank you. Babette, I want to thank you for your courage coming forward and addressing the council as you have. I know that you keep an open book to the public and to the people that come and speak to you directly, and I appreciate that as well. I know there were many great problems that preceded you taking over as executive director, and it takes a special person to be able to step into the shoes that you did and to not complain about it, but to try to make progress. Obviously, there's a lot of progress to be made, and it looks like you're trying to turn that around and seek the help that you need in the education for your commissioners. Speaking as a council member that used to be on the Housing Authority Board for 6 years, I know there is a huge amount of work that the board members must look at and do and perform. And I said it was one of the hardest commissions I'd ever been on, and the hours and hours and hours of studying that each person was expected to put in and to learn about housing authorities, and the research that I particularly did on the side to learn what to do, what to say, how to vote on issues is not easy. And so your Board of Commissioners also should be commended for their dedication for being on a troubled Housing Authority Board. I mean, this is a board that a lot of commissioners would not want to be on. And if they are willing to be educated, I think that that's a wonderful thing. And I appreciate you stepping forward to saying that you were seeking education for them. I wish I could offer you more support than I do now, but we do appreciate everything you do. So thank you for coming forward tonight.
Thank you. Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
And, you know, and I just want to briefly add to it, because I do think this is where I lost my train of thought, but it was a matter of who's coming out to train. Over this last year or so, you know, I've been fortunate enough to be able to encounter a lot of what I consider high-level public housing professionals, whether it is attorneys coming out that represent many housing authorities, whether it's consultants that, for instance, it's one group called Nan McKay who actually did our organizational assessment to outline some of the things that we need to work on in terms of management. They offer consultants to come out. We have a list that we're budgeting for, and these are folks who can take what is not all that simple and put it in lay terms and make certain that it's operational, not only from a governance standpoint, but also from a day-to-day standpoint.
Madam Mayor.
Alderman Busker.
Yes, Director. Could you speak a little bit to the where the need is with relation to the Housing Authority at this time? You're talking about demolishing the east side development and partially the Westview. Are you going to have enough space for everyone that's currently using the housing, or is there a waiting list for people trying to get in? Are you looking at building another complex somewhere? What's the status of that?
Well, we, excuse me, we maintain a pretty large waiting list. And when it comes down to the Parkside area, there will be relocation vouchers provided, given the fact that we have no choice but to go through the process of demolition. These vouchers can be used anywhere in the country. We'll provide relocation voucher education and counseling to the residents to the best of our ability. We'll bring in people to be able to provide that, that training as well. But the one thing that I do make clear to the residents and anybody who asks me is that we will make certain that everyone at Parkside Apartments, they're placed before the work begins. And if not, then we'll have to do things in sections. As for Westview, we have 196 units of various sizes in Westview. So the 18 apartments that I'm talking about, or the 3 buildings, that it represents a small portion, but it does take away from our portfolio, just like Parkside takes away from the portfolio. Once we get the application submitted for demolition, we'll begin the, I'd say, analysis of our options in terms of creating additional affordable housing. My greatest hope is that we will be able to pursue the option of single-family homes, particularly those homes that are possibly vacant, dilapidated, and renovating those homes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. One more thing I want to add in terms of you asked resources or need. I do hope that you all will see the Housing Authority the way I see the city, and that is a partnership. It's a necessary partnership. One thing that I hope will happen, because as Alderman Ross mentioned, there's a lot of one-on-one conversation. I hope that we can maybe even hold a few community meetings together, because what happens is that some of the residents that are in housing, they'll attend the meeting, and then there's confusion because they only get one part of the story. Either I can attend or I can provide an update, but I would hope that we can come together, even though we're pursuing the same thing in a different way.
Madam Mayor,
Alderman Meisig.
thank you again, Babette, our Director Varner. This is really helpful to see really the state and understand much of the direction that the Housing Authority is going. You had mentioned really an emphasis on training and education, and I truly support that.
Mm-hmm.
And could you describe for us what the greatest opportunities are right now in the side of training and education?
Mm-hmm. And are you referring to with staff and commissioners, or are you referring to the possibility of opportunities for residents?
So it sounds like you touch base a little bit on both.
Mm-hmm.
And on the policies procedures side,
Mm-hmm.
I feel that's, it is that in fact the direction on the commissioners?
Well, let me see, and I hope I'm answering this correctly. When we draft our policies and procedures, we present them to the board for their approval. What we want to do in the future, what we want to do in the future is to be able to create some committees. So one of the committees that we're looking at is an ad hoc finance committee, where, for instance, maybe our representative on the commission from the city would be the chair of that finance committee, and we could recruit 2 or 3 other individuals with either government or finance background to be able to review, the policies that we're creating, the procedures that we're creating, and spend a little time doing some research, and maybe even receive some technical assistance from HUD in terms of what this will look like, what that final product should be. We have a financial analyst that I work with HUD, and as I mentioned before, we do have a new fee accountant who's absolutely wonderful and absolutely thorough, and has been cleaning everything up that unfortunately we couldn't get the last fee accountant to do, because a lot of the responsibilities that fee accountant hadn't taken on. And I believe the combination of this ad hoc committee as well as the new fee accountant will make this process easy, and it will not only serve as leverage, but I think it will kind of increase community confidence in the fact that we're spending a lot of time doing this and doing this correctly.
Thank you. One last follow-up. Thank you. I think that helps in understanding really the direction of where to place the resources on training education from this level of governance, right? And could you touch base just very briefly on the training education for residents?
Okay. You know, my background is health and human services, and that was one of the reasons why when this opportunity was afforded, I was looking so forward to begin building programs and services for the residents to participate in as they chose to participate in. I think that when I look at the ultimate needs of those who are low income and working towards self-sufficiency. I mean, we do have our family support services program, but we also need to look at not only soft skills training, but work retention, career development, the beginner stages of pursuing education. We have a lot of residents who will come and say, hey, you know, how did you get to the point of where you do what you do or what you've done in the past? How can I get that way? And they don't have that launching pad, that starting point. And I would like to see the Housing Authority bring those type of programs and fully develop those programs for the city of Freeport, not only for our residents to participate in, but anybody. And hopefully we can do that collaboratively. We don't want to reinvent the wheel.
Thank you.
Mayor.
Alderman Borneman.
Thank you. Thank you for being here, Director. Before I get into some questions I have for you, we've all met you and had a chance to get to know you a little bit, but could you kind of inform the public about your background and what, prior to this position, where were you working? What type of experience did you have?
Okay. Well, I'm originally from Freeport. I lived in the Twin Cities for about 20 years. Before I came back to Freeport, I was doing some consulting, working with other nonprofit organizations. I've been the executive director of an organization called Women's Advocates, which was the first domestic violence shelter in the country, located in St. Paul. I've also worked in chemical health, and this is senior leadership positions in chemical health, family preservation, youth services, as well as homeless housing programs with services.
So what type of degrees do you have? I'm sure you have a couple, right?
Well, I have a master's degree in public administration. My bachelor's degree is in marketing.
Okay, thank you. If I could just keep going there. Thank you, Mayor. When did you take over as the executive director, whether you were, when did you start here at Freeport?
I started as the interim in the middle of September of 2017 and was appointed in May of 18, if I'm correct.
Since you took over, do you know if the way your meetings were recorded, did that change at all? Do you see a change in that?
In the way we conducted our meetings?
Yes.
I'm not certain the way meetings were conducted before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Whose decision was it to get what you kind of describe as the supplemental forensic audit?
That was approved by the board.
Was it your recommendation, or?
Yeah, well, I think that yes, I agreed to it. I agreed to it because I knew that the organization needed some type of guidance for financial policies and procedures. But this was also something, if I'm correct, had been discussed before. I actually started, and one of the concerns was the cost. And so, again, we conducted a very small scale. We know that forensic audits can get into, hundreds of thousands of dollars. But we conducted a very small scale one, I think a little less than $30,000 to focus on what we knew was not currently operating appropriately or efficiently.
Okay. And you've talked that you're kind of underway of developing new policies, is that fair to say? Or in response to the audit's findings?
Yes.
There's a couple that kind of stood out to me, and I was wondering if this is something that were changed immediately. It seemed like, have you developed a fraud hotline that was recommended?
We're working on the fraud hotline. We're looking to have that implemented by February, and that should be outlined in our work plan. Yeah.
Okay. Some of the bank accounts appears that at least from 2014 to looks like 2017, probably before you were around, weren't being really handled with basic generally accepted accounting standards. Is that something that you're still working on changing, or is that something that was changed already?
Well, that's something that I would say has changed, in progress, and that's with the new fee accountant. The fee accountant began in, if I'm correct, July of 2019. He spent a lot of time kind of cleaning up past entries. He does apply GAAP standards, as well as is very familiar with accounting and finance from a public housing perspective. We're getting caught up with our financial reports. And when I say that, in terms of documentation, monthly reconciliations with the former accountant, that was happening. But in terms of, I would say, operational financial reports that the board needed to review and understand, that was not in place. So it is in place now, and we're looking for the fee account to have us caught up on our reports. He has already completed June through September, with October should be coming this week, and November, HUD considers us caught up.
Okay. When that assessment, the FAR's assessment was done in August, and at that point, I think they found that there was those statements you're talking about. Last time they were completed was the month of May, and that was at the same time where we were transitioning to a new accountant.
Yes, the old fee accountant, I believe, completed May, and that was with the new fee accountant. They did provide some support in transitioning, and we also had to get the new fee accountant trained on our PHA software, our public housing finance software. So yes.
And then I'm looking at some of the capital fund issues where the loans weren't obligated as basically needed, and it looks like it really hurt the bottom line or the potential grants in the future. Has that been something that's occurred? Because this mentions 2016, 2017, again, before your time, but is that something that is, unacceptable in your eyes and is getting...
Now, I will say 2016 and 2017 capital fund grants are part of those were under my watch as well. When you get a capital fund grant, so for instance, for 2016, you have 2 years to obligate, and then you have 2 years to spend it down. And the 2 years to obligate, they have to be obligated at 90%. The 2016 grant, there was, if I'm correct, close to $400,000, $350,000, $400,000 that had been on record committed to relocation and demolition. There was a challenge getting a better understanding of exactly, okay, what do we do with this now? I also just recently learned that due to the RAD of the high-rises, the Brewster Hosmer high-rises, we're currently investigating whether or not the Housing Authority in the year of 2017 did not get reimbursed from that 2016 grant on expenses that were paid for the RAD. Now, this investigation starts with HUD, and I've already pulled in the fee accountant. really what's happening is that we want to understand whether or not the Housing Authority is still owed money from that capital grant. If so, we're probably looking at about $235,000 that will be paid back to what we call our central office. And then we will have about $120,000 of that 2016 grant to do some of the necessary work at Parkside, so we won't lose those dollars come April. The 17 grant was not obligated within the 2 years. We did request an extension so that we could apply some of those funds to the demolition project. We did attempt to obligate up to what we needed to, the 90%. We did get the bids. Once we get the final approval from HUD with the 2017 grants, which again, we're waiting on one assessment that HUD is conducting, we can begin using the bids in terms of our procurement process to begin starting that work.
Thank you for the thorough answer there. And then one thing that stood out to me with regards to just the travel expense policy, is that something that, has that been changed yet, or do you know when these policies will take effect? That you...
Yes, we have, and please forgive me because I'm going through a list, but we have completed our travel policy cash distribution related to travel. We've completed quite a few policies, but yes, the travel policy has been updated and it has been approved.
Thank you. And just my last question, this assessment, the FARS assessment, so Public Housing Agency Recovery and Sustainability, for those listening at home, FARS assessment was completed. This resulted in the troubled rating. Prior to this assessment, this is an annual thing. Is that correct? It's an annual assessment for authorities that are listed as troubled?
What we refer to as the FOS, which I mentioned earlier, is like that grading system, that 100-point grading system that focuses on those 4 areas. That's something that is looked at on an annual basis. The FARS, which was conducted, usually is conducted if you are substandard or troubled. And so it won't be conducted on an annual basis. That work plan allows us to update HUD as well as the community and the board on progress that we're making based on that assessment.
Okay. And then just, so prior to this troubled rating, do you know the Housing Authority had already been in a substandard rating?
Yes,
okay.
Since 2015.
I think you mentioned that already. I just wanted to clarify that. I appreciate your time here. Thanks.
Thank you.
Anything else, Council? Babette, thank you for all the time on this, and please know you don't have to wait for a yearly update. You have the ability to come every first and third Monday night and give a report, just like the other department heads do. So please make yourself available should you desire.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
And I'm not sure if whatever, yeah, there you go. I didn't want you to leave without getting what you dropped. Thank you very much. All right, we'll move on to item number 8, which is an appointment. Madam Clerk, could you please read this for the record?
Acceptance, pardon me, acceptance of an appointment of Julie Reynolds to the Library Board effective immediately until May 31st, 2022.
Is there a motion for acceptance?
So moved. Seconded.
We have a motion made by Alderman Parker, seconded by Alderman Ross. Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll on this appointment?
Berberay,
Aye.
Borneman,
Aye.
McClanathan,
Aye.
I'm sorry, Ross,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Busker,
Aye.
Brashaw,
Aye.
Meissick,
Aye.
and the motion passes 8-0.
Thank you. Item number 9 is the second reading of ordinance 2020-03. Could you please read this?
An ordinance of the City of Freeport approving and authorizing the city to enter into a master pole attachment agreement with USCOC of Central Illinois regarding small wireless facilities.
Thank you. Director Supman.
status of this is the same as it was as we discussed before. The 20 locations, and we request approval. Any question?
Mayor?
Alderman McClanathan.
I assume as you and Manager Crowe have gone through this process, some of the questions, raised in public comments are something that you've run across, and feel like it has been satisfactorily addressed. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't have brought it to us at this stage, but could you, it's not something that was really discussed at the last meeting, so do you mind addressing what information you have on that?
So, we've done research on multiple sources. The individual provided me the article via email last week, concerned about 5G. So I went out and we both researched. There are as many. I provided him back 9 articles that indicated that there are no health concerns. So the radiation, these small cell cellulars, because their location, they don't have the power that the 4G LTEs do because they're up a small cellular, but they provide latency, remove latency because of their location with each other. So the indications, and I wish I'd known, because I would have brought one of the articles down. There was one done by an astrophysicist for the National Science Foundation and for Forbes that ran in that the radiation that you're receiving is less powerful than when you step out and get radiation from the sun. Yeah. So, I did provide those articles to him as well. He is concerned about this. There have been communities across the United States that have questioned and disallowed it, but the other thing that what he didn't specify is, so the company that was India and Belgium outlawed specific companies' antennas, and that was Huawei, which, if you don't know, that company was also outlawed by the United States, because they were outlawed not because of the technology, but because they were stealing trade secrets. This is the Chinese company, and that the U.S. worked with to indict the owner of it. So I'm not sure why Russia outlawed it, but that's why Belgium had stopped it.
Mayor.
Alderman Ross.
Okay, in regards to some of your comments, Alderman Craigson, City Manager, what about down the road as they boost the cell tower? Just a minute. As they boost the cell tower performance or give it more energy or more power, just to boost the signal, that's what I meant to say. Do we possibly see any problem with the human race?
So 5G is not designed to do it in operation of that way. That's why they have the small cellular towers. Here's what I will, so the indications are, and the studies of indication, is that there have been medical studies dealing with all cellular, that if you're standing next to the cellular tower, it will generate some damage to the skin that could result in skin cancer if you're standing next to the tower. So 5G is not set up to do that. They're small cell cellular, they're still at 35 feet. And so you're not standing right next to the antennas. And it's a low power radio wave that allows allow for rapid transfer of information. The other thing is if the communities that adopt 5G through the presentations that we went to, and which is at the various conferences we've both been at, if we don't adopt 5G, we will be left. This is the way industry in the United States is going. This is the way that it's, and it has to do with, I will tell you that FHN and Monroe Clinic are very excited about that we're a 5G community because that's the way, we talked about telemedicine, that's the way they're going to be going with telemedicine. It is the delivery of, if you don't go to 5G, you will be moving off the Amazon delivery sites. So, because Amazon's going to be using autonomous vehicles and drones to deliver it. All of the city, smart city equipment, which we are looking at, is all being designed and delivered on 5G technology, as is technology that businesses are using. And that, if we want to, the two things that the businesses want within the communities are fiber circle and 5G.
Okay, follow, Mayor. Has anyone compared the 5G with fiber?
Well, it's two different systems.
Okay.
So
They-
I'll let the technical
Okay.
guy.
They run hand in hand.
Right.
They work together.
So if you had maybe you don't have an answer for this, but if you had a choice, would it be 5G or fiber?
So you have to have fiber to get 5G.
You had to have fiber to get to 5G.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve. All right.
Yep.
Well, I'll move to call the question.
All right.
Needs a second? I'll second it.
So we have a motion on the floor made by Alderman Bornum, seconded by Alderman McClanathan to call the question. Do we need a voice vote? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, Madam Clerk, could you please call the vote on ordinance 2020-03?
Berberay.
Aye.
Borneman.
Aye.
McClanathan.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
Busker.
Aye.
Brashaw.
Aye.
And Meissen.
Aye.
The ordinance passes 8-0.
Okay, thank you. Next is item number 10, which is second reading of ordinance 2020-04. Could you please read this?
An ordinance of the City of Freeport approving the purchase of certain real property from the Stevenson County Tax Trustee.
Thank you. Assistant Hines.
Yes, this is regarding the purchase of the 8 tax trustee-owned properties for the Illinois Department of Natural Resources Flood Hazard Mitigation Grant. So in order to move forward with the grant, we have to purchase these properties. The city has to own them, and then we would be 100% reimbursed at the time of completion of the project by June 30th of 2021.
Thank you. Any questions, council? Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll?
Berberay.
Aye.
Borneman.
Aye.
McClanathan.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
Busker.
Aye.
Brashaw.
Aye.
And Meissen.
Aye.
The ordinance passes 8-0.
Thank you. Item number 11 is the first reading of ordinance 2020-05. Could you please read this?
Amendment to Chapter 1060, Garbage and Rubbish Collection and Disposal.
Thank you. Manager Crowe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Council, when we did the review, it was brought, we're in the process of reviewing various ordinances. We discovered the garbage and rubbish ordinance was well out of date. In fact, it still listed the city as the collecting body for garbage and rubbish, even to the point where it was actually mentioned that the city used to provide toters for everybody, which was interesting. The other thing was that it listed that the landfill was still in operation, which is now closed, so we had to remove that section. Additionally, the monitoring of the garbage and recycling collection has now been shifted from community development down to public works. So we made that change as we go forward. These went through review from multiple department heads, and then as well as assistance. I'll give Diane Cayley, because she deals with the complaints that come in dealing with garbage, and then was reviewed by Attorney Zito. So this is to clean up some old language. Actually, this reflects our current contract. As we go forward, my recommendation is to approve it, to move it forward, and for approval the next council meeting.
Madam Mayor,
Alderman Brashaw.
thank you. I'd like to make a motion to move this forward to the next council meeting.
Second.
Okay, I just have one question, Manager Crowe. I know we get so many complaints on how long the toters will sit out at the curb. And I know that what's written in this ordinance says that they need to have them back out of the public view by 6 p.m. What teeth are in place so that way, you know, when the code enforcement goes out, can you address that?
Yeah, we treat that as any other ordinance violation that goes into iWorks, and if it's their first offense, they'll probably get a warning. If, you know, it's a property that we've had habitual issues with, then they'll just get fined, and it'll go through the admin hearing process like anything else.
Good, thank you. I just wanted to make sure there was an address in there for you. It wasn't just an ordinance, but gave you the ability to do what you needed to.
Yeah, and that's been one we've been especially active with lately. Sometimes we'll get complaints, and it happens to be that neighborhood's trash pickup day, in which case it's perfectly fine that they're out, and we have written plenty of violations on it as well.
Thank you.
We have a couple neighborhoods that the right side of the street gets picked up on one day and the left gets picked up on the following day. So the neighbors on one side of the street complain because they still see the toters out on the other side of the street. But just, I asked the question, it's amazing how many violations they have written in since we've gone to the toters with leaving them on the curb.
Mayor?
Alderman McClanathan.
It looked like a really old provision, but what was the, I see it's crossed off, the community collection program?
So there used to be within many, so this ordinance was written in 1994. It used to be a program where they would put all their garbage one time a month from out on the street, or not one time a month, once a year, and we would go by and collect it. Then this when the city was doing the collection, and then it was not included in the last contract. I had done, we call it, basically it's a cleanup week. There are communities around that do cleanup weeks, and that we initially had talked about that, doing something like that with the companies, and that's something that companies are moving away from because it is, they have to get basically assistance from the city with front-end loaders, and they have to do dump truck style pickup.
And a follow-up, Mayor, when was the last time we actually had that? I mean, I can't recall.
I would have to ask the longtime residents in the community when they remember. It's
been at least 10 years, I think.
it's the last contract was signed in 2004, so that'd be prior to that.
Okay.
16. Is that referring to the bulky waste?
Yeah.
If there's no other discussion, we have a motion made by Alderman Brashaw, seconded by Alderman Parker, to move ordinance 2020-05 onto the next regularly scheduled meeting. Item number 12 is the first reading of ordinance 2020-06. Could you please read this, Madam Clerk?
An ordinance amending Chapter 806 alcoholic liquor sales to include a downtown tasting walk.
And Manager Crowe.
So I am on the hot seat here because Attorney Cox decided to bail out and take a week of vacation. So he called me on Friday and said, hey, can you take this for me? But that we put in the ordinance, he and I reworked the sections that the council had asked on the committee of the whole. We had put, we looked at our other fees as we went forward. We're recommending, and you'll notice we actually had to add a section 806.05, which is the licensing fees. We've added this section for the T5 license, which is now $100 per event. And so that was one of the requests from the from the council and just review. This is again a tasting walk. One of the things that I will bring to the attention is that there was and Steve and I looked at it, it does require all pourers to have Bassett training. I think I mentioned that 501c3s did not. We, after much discussion, that's a state law. We can be more restrictive as a city. We do, so pourers will be required to do Bassett training. And I know the Bassett trained that Dovey has already published, and the Greater Freeport Partnership has already put out for their volunteers to, we provide Bassett training through the city. So, so that was another change that we made to this. So, other than that, this is what was presented to you at the committee of the whole. This will allow tastings. The other, additionally, a liquor license to allow for tastings, and when they collect it, that'll be controlled by the people. The tastings are 1 ounce for wine or 2 ounces for beer as we go forward, and each organization that runs a tasting can only get 2 licenses a year for tastings. I'm standing by for any questions.
Madam Mayor.
Alderman Bradshaw.
Manager Crowe, where are the parameters geographically of this tasting area?
It's in the downtown area. Let me look through the, actually, I do not, there is.
Central business.
There was, yeah, there was a map with the draft. I'm sorry it was not.
In the committee of the whole?
In the committee of the whole.
So it's the one we looked at last time, but at that time frame, I believe you talked about expanding the parameters that were shown to us.
That was the map that you talked about for the festival ordinance. There was a separate map for this one that included the whole downtown area.
Okay, I'll look that up.
Mayor,
McClathan.
just noted, it indicates, it says the central business district of the city is defined in, and that gives the code section on it, if that's helpful.
Okay.
Madam Mayor?
Alderman Busker.
Yeah. Will this require the volunteer pourers to be on-site Bassett trained or off-site Bassett trained?
On-site Bassett trained.
Okay.
Any other questions, council?
Madam Mayor?
Alderman Busker.
Motion moving forward.
I'll second that.
We have a motion made by Alderman Busker, seconded by Alderman Borneman to move ordinance 2020-06 onto the next regularly scheduled meeting. Item number 13 is the first reading of ordinance 2020-07. Madam Clerk, would you please read this?
An ordinance amending Chapter 290, Compensation and Benefits, Section 290.11, Leaves of Absence.
Manager Crowe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As discussed in the committee of the whole, this lowers the amount of vacation, the non-union, there were some for the fire and police, down 200 hours. One of the things that we got into a discussion, and both the fire chief and the police chief have talked with their individuals, is that no one will, about what their feelings are and the impact of this. Additionally, no one will lose vacation. I know there was a concern about this. In fact, the fire department's already following this ordinance. For their non-union, it's the non-union, non-shift personnel. So that is the 2 deputy chiefs and the chief, and for the police department, the lieutenants, the deputy chief and the chief. This brings it in line with what the other non-union personnel are doing. We have added a section at the request of some of the council members. We pulled the section out about buyback and added the section on executive leave. There is some concern I will from expressed on some of the members who the department heads and the lieutenants. I will say the lieutenants also expressed a concern because they can't use the current vacation they have. So their concern is if we give 5 days executive leave, that will be, you're giving me other vacation I can't use as we go forward. So that was a concern that was expressed on that. I just want to make council aware of that. So, but that was a benefit we were trying to give for the non-union senior personnel. And with that, I will stand by for, and as you also see that we took paragraph C out, which was a concern from council, and we've made it more clear on the other sections as we move forward. So I'm standing by for any questions.
Mayor. Alderman Borneman.
Just to be clear, the executive leave is going to be offered to the, I think you mentioned the lieutenants, but it's something they said that
Right.
wouldn't really make a difference to them.
So what I allowed the departments to do is give me the list of people that they felt, because it's proposed to me as the cell, or whoever is the city manager, and give them. So I asked them to discuss and give me the list of who they were. The concern from two of the lieutenants is that they consistently can't use their vacation anyway. So their concern, and I think that was actually expressed by not only lieutenants, but a couple of the other members in the staff, is they are not, because of the work schedule, are not able to get under that 200 hours. Right now, 5 of your department heads, or 4 of them are over at 200 or over 200 hours, as I am, and I know one of the deputy chiefs and a couple of the lieutenants are in that situation. One of the deputy chiefs in the fire department's in that situation. So.
Mayor.
Alderman Ross.
Yes, Manager Grove. Now, if they're over that 200 hours,
They just stop earning vacation at that time.
okay, they stop earning, but would they be in line for the buyback or anything to
No,
compensate them?
the way it's written is that 200 hours, as is with all the non-union.
Non-union.
And then, so all the non-union, when it's 200 hours, as is 2 of the union contracts, the way it's written right now. And the AFSCME, we're still in negotiation with the police, but AFSCME and the fire, when they hit their maximum amount of vacation, and they get the equivalent of 200 hours, so the firefighters get the equivalent of 200 hours in their contract based upon their shifts. There are 2 levels within the police department dealing. Matt, when did you pass the contract that set the 2 different levels within the contract? Do you remember?
The separation between the sergeants and the,
Yeah.
it was about 2 years ago, I believe, that the sergeants, the agreement with the sergeants to mirror the union went into place.
Well, no, what I was talking about was some of the union members can earn 302 hours and some can.
That was on the last contract that was passed. Those who had already accumulated over a certain amount because of the years on, were allowed to keep that 302 hours. And the younger officers that hadn't accrued that much, there was a level set for those on years on that couldn't accrue more than that. I believe it's 254 hours.
So, and the way, so that, and what they're is done is accrued based upon their shifts, their 12-hour shifts, and that's the equivalent for 200 hours on the 12-hour shift. And so, the reason the executive leave is in here is because as an executive leave, that is strictly targeted towards the executive personnel and is not dealt with from the unions. We are currently buying back AFSCME because in the last AFSCME contract, I think this is the last year we buy back because we negotiated them down to 200 hours. The firefighters were at that negotiation level, already at that level as we are going forward. So,
Mayor.
Alderman McClanathan.
So if I understand you correctly, outside of individuals that are looking to be addressed on this, all other non-union personnel are dealing with the 200.
That's correct.
ASME is dealing with 200.
Yes, that's correct.
Fire's dealing with 200.
Yes.
And this explicitly does not impact the sergeant corporal dynamic that you're talking about.
That's
because
correct.
they're excluded from this. And anybody who's in excess of this is, and that doesn't use it up over the next year is gonna get paid out for their time. That brings them down to 200.
That's correct.
Okay. And I guess in regards to executive, I mean, we didn't put the provision in here, but if you guys don't want it, it won't be used. I mean,
Well,
we can take it out, but.
I get the question, that they're wanting it, and they are willing to take it. It's just,
If it's not a benefit, I mean, we don't need.
so I'm trying to find something that I can use as a negotiation tool when I bring in department heads, so I would like to keep it.
Okay. And
I
certainly.
I got asked in the last council meeting, have we talked to these individuals and what's the feedback from them?
Understood. Yeah, I was just saying from my end, I mean, I certainly don't mind giving it if it's welcome. If you don't want it, then I certainly don't want it.
This is welcome, this is.
Okay, all right,
And it separates the department heads and executive personnel
fair enough.
from the union.
Okay.
Alderman Parker?
Can't get it up on here. What's the executive leave? When,
So executive leave is, it is all department heads and employees and many of the management or professional employees are routinely required to attend meetings or work on projects outside of the normal working hours of the city. In recognition that significant hours, this is right from the ordinance, significant hours spent in the evenings and weekends, all department head employees and those management employees designated by the city manager shall receive 5 days of executive leave each calendar year. This time must be used on an annual basis or it will be forfeited, so it doesn't carry over. We don't pay it out. Any department hired after the start of the year shall have his or her executive prorated in accordance with the hire date for the first year of employment. The request to use executive sheet will be submitted to the city manager for approval. All department heads submit their leave chits right now through the city manager.
okay, thank you.
Further discussion, council? Is there a motion to move this forward?
So moved.
Second.
Berber, Meissen. Yeah.
All right, we have a motion made by Alderman McClanathan, seconded by Alderman Berberet, to move ordinance 2020-07 on to the next regularly scheduled meeting. Item number 14 is the adoption of resolution 2020-03. Madam Clerk, would you please read this?
Resolution approving engineer for Freeport Art Museum assessment.
Thank you. Manager Crowe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, and I'll ask Director Carr to step in after I get as well on this, because both of us work together on this. So the Art Museum actually approached us back in November of last year to do some foundation work. They were having some leaks in the foundation. And Dennis went over and Director Carr went over there and did an initial site assessment. They also had a report from Hoffman that was done probably 5 years ago on the condition of the building. And as council is aware, the city actually owns the Art Museum, and the Art Museum pays us $1 a year in lease amounts. Before we put any money into it, we wanted to get an assessment of what the conditions of the Art Museum. So Director Carr went out and solicited bids, and Fairgram was the low bidder here. We had Will Hoffman bid on it. We asked a couple other firms to bid on it. They were the low bidder on this, and to do an assessment by a significant amount. That's what I will tell you. Which, and Dennis, is there anything else you want to add to that?
Both Willa Hoffman and Fairgram did kind of a walkthrough to get a preliminary idea on the scope that it was going to require to take care of the report that we were asking for.
Mayor?
Alderman McClenathan.
Thank you. Frankly, you know, the art museum, or that building is one that hasn't really come into our purview very often over the years. Like you said, had the lease. I don't know if it's current or expired or whatever, but we've had the lease for a long time. The art museum's operated out of it, and that's just kind of how things have gone. What are we, and I know you gave a memo in regards to it, but what are we primarily looking to do? Are we looking to update the lease in regards to this? Are we looking to see what are the issues that we're facing as the owner of this building? What's the end game here?
I think the intent is to identify the current condition as it stands versus even some of the regulations that are out there for HVAC and structural assessment, architectural accessibility. I mean, as law permits right now, any modifications you do to the building would have to come with an accessibility requirement that you would have to make it accessible all the way out to the handicap spot. And currently, the building itself is not accessible. There are no elevators. There are no parking spots. There's really no way to get out of the basement floor for anybody that is.
The other assessment is that we want to make sure, before we throw any more money into the art museum, we want to make sure that the building, because there's some indications the foundation's crumbling on it. So one of the things I had talked to the art museum director previously is that I don't know, council, you probably have more history on this than I do, but that building was a award-winning school that was a design. It is actually eligible to be put on the National Historic Registry, but the Art Museum Board didn't want to move that forward. So they've made the decision, but they've asked us to, they have 4 rooms that they cannot store material in because they're getting water into them. So they've asked us to fix the foundation, but I can't in good conscience ask you to put money in a building that I don't know that neither my civil engineer or I know what the cost is or what the necessity is for repair. So that's, okay. And we know, as Dennis pointed out, the building is not ADA compliant. Ramp has complained to us about the fact that they do not have access to the art museum. The ramp is well, and what we've been doing, what has been happening is the art museum would be band-aiding it. They would get one thing fixed and then send us a bill. They would get another. So I said, we're not going to do that anymore. As we go into negotiations and to the new lease of the contract, we want to know where the condition of this building is.
Mayor?
Alderman Ross.
But at this time, it's still up to code in a matter of speaking.
What's that?
I said at this time, it's still up to code in a matter of speaking.
Well, because I haven't done any, because the building has not had any done work, but you cannot be accessed as it is. Okay. And technically, because they've changed the nature of the building, it should have been brought up to code years ago.
Okay.
Madam Mayor.
Alderman Brashaw.
Thank you. I agree with everything you said, Manager Crow. This is something that was before the council many mayors ago. And one of the reasons they didn't do the general renovation was because of the compliance issues and the cost of making it compliant. And you're right, it could be on the registry list, but it is not currently. And there were a lot of issues. They said, well, if they ever did a major renovation, but the city has never had the money to do that. And there again, since the city owns the building, and you're talking about prevailing wage as well. So there's huge cost issues there. It is a beautiful building, but it's been leaking ever since I've known or been in Freeport. And they're always fixing it, doing the Band-Aids and trying to keep it running. Art is necessary, I believe, for human life. I mean, to make a city beautiful, to enjoy life, to add, the frosting on the cake, so to speak. Cake without frosting is kind of icky, So I am a supporter of the arts. My mother's a professional artist, and as an artist's daughter, I think it's very important to have the arts. But I also know we've had a lot of damaged materials in the building, known as our art museum, including in the basement where they lost some wonderful works of art in the past. I don't have the answers, but this has been a long time coming, and I just wanted the council to be aware of a little bit of the history. Thank you.
Your Honor, to sum it up, to sum this up, it sounds like it's going down the same path the City Hall did, the old City Hall. So, just wanted to throw that out. Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Alderman Busker.
Yeah, much to, I hate to, not that I hate to agree with you, but, I mean, it does have that eerie ring to, we don't know what's gonna happen next. I mean, before, city manager, before you came on, we had much discussion about this over at the 524 building, about this place and the old City Hall, when we come in here about a maintenance program for all the city buildings, what's gonna happen next? Well, all of a sudden, now, we're finding out, we're bringing this building, the art center to our attention. As long as I've been on the council, that building has never been brought to the floor for any kind of repair or any discussion whatsoever. That's 4 years of a basement leaking or whatever that we had no knowledge of. So, I mean, whatever we decide, I'm in favor of getting an assessment done here, but whatever, I think we need to definitely get a plan in place to mitigate this or find a solution more quickly than we did with City Hall. I don't think 15 years of debating one building is the best use of our time here. So with that, I make a motion to approve this.
Yeah, I would agree, not even just a plan, but also that long expired contract, I believe is important to get in place as well. So we have a motion made by Alderman Busker, seconded by Alderman Parker, to adopt Resolution 2020-03. If there's no further discussion, Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll?
Berberay.
Aye.
Borneman.
Aye.
McClanathan.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
Busker.
Aye.
Brashaw.
Aye.
And Mizek.
Aye.
The resolution is adopted 8-0.
Thank you. Item number 15 is the adoption of Resolution 2020-04. Could you please read this?
Resolution approving 2020 motor fuel tax maintenance, materials, chip seals, and ash tree removal.
Director Carr.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. At the beginning of every year, we bring forward a resolution which allows us to tap into our motor fuel tax funds that the state sets our way. For us to use them, we have to go through the step of passing the resolution, and then the resolution gets sent to IDOT. IDOT approves the resolution as it is, and then we're allowed to submit in our different bid packets. The first of which we do every year is the materials contract, which covers our cold patch and then our hot mix asphalt. That's the general maintenance. When you look at the long numbers, that's the OOGM. And then in our capital plan, we had brought forward using the MFT money also to do ash tree removal. That would also be covered under this resolution, and that would be the 01GM project number. And then also on the capital, the CIP we also had the chip seals as part of the materials, and so that would be the 02GM. All those general maintenance projects would fall under the resolution, so that way we wouldn't have to continuously bring resolutions forward and burden everybody's time. So this resolution is to pass it, allowing us to use our motor fuel tax.
Mayor.
Director Carr, how many ash trees do you anticipate coming down with that?
So the first contract we're going to send out is going to be for 67 trees.
And you think that's for the entire year project?
We are going to reassess after we get those trees marked off. I've got our forestry guys out this winter to confirm where our locations are and make sure we're not missing any.
Okay, thank you. And Alderman McClanathan.
Thank you. On the resolution, I saw the OO attached for about 600,000, but I didn't see the 01 and the 02. I saw in your memo you referenced the 01 and the 02. So what are the figures that we're using for the 01 and the 02?
So passing a resolution for the 00 is kind of I don't want to say parent-child relationship, but you can establish your entire general maintenance as the 00, and then the 01 and 02 are just different subsection projects underneath that general maintenance.
Follow up, Mayor. All right, and on your OO, you had it at 600,000. Now, you, as you indicated in your memo, we get about we had historically gotten 650, and then we got about another 450 from that. Where are we addressing the balance of it?
The additional,
I'm seeing the 600 under the, you said the parent, I guess, on the OO. So where do we address the other portions of it?
so that 600 covers all three of those categories.
Okay.
And I think it's a little heavy, but I didn't want to have to come back if we ended up getting a decent price with the chip seals and council wanted to pursue that a little farther.
So the other motor fuel tax, we're actually we're moving towards the Adams Street match as part of that, and some of the work on the Detmer Bridge.
Thank you. That's where I was going. Where are we
Yes.
going with the rest of the money on it? So, okay, thank you. Mayor, I'd make a motion to approve Resolution 2020-04.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor made by Alderman McClanathan, seconded by Alderman Busker to approve Resolution 2020-04. Unless there's further discussion, council? Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll?
Barbaray.
Aye.
Borneman.
Aye.
McClanathan.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
Busker.
Aye.
Brashaw.
Aye.
And Meissen.
Aye.
That resolution is adopted 8-0.
And item number 16 is a motion for an approved bid. Madam Clerk, would you please read this?
Bid opening on January 15th, 2020, surplus equipment from Library and Public Works.
And who wants to, Director Carr, you'd like to take the lead on that one?
Yes, I can take it.
All right.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So we had a bid opening for different library surplus equipment as well as a couple of pieces of equipment for Public Works. We received 2 bids, both from residents, one for a Public Works item and then a couple for some library items. So staff would request the approval from City Council to accept the high bids for the surplus equipment of $1,015.
There are only 3 items we received bids on.
Mayor,
Alderman Borneman.
I would move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion made by Alderman Borneman, seconded by Alderman McClanathan to approve the bids on the surplus. Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll?
Barbaray.
Aye.
Borneman.
Aye.
McClanathan.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
Busker.
Aye.
Brashaw.
Aye.
And Meissen.
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0.
Item number 17 is the approval of agreement with Fairgram for the annual landfill monitoring. Director Carr.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. As I was told earlier in this meeting, since 1973, Fairgram has been doing the annual engineering services for the landfill. They kind of helped design it, and then they've been doing their best to keep us compliant with the IEPA. They've been doing a fantastic job of it. I've kind of listed out some of the items they take care of. They're here for any questions you have on any of those items. But staff would request, and I guess before I go into that, so it is actually $6,000-ish cheaper than last year. Last year also had a boundary survey, but I was also told that they put out bids or quotes for lab sampling and got better prices for us for the lab sampling. The sampling is actually cheaper than they can do it in-house and that we can do it, so I said thank you. But we request that the council enter into a contract with Fairgram to perform the annual engineering services for the landfills 2, 3, and 4 for a total of $201,700.
Madam Mayor.
Alderman Brashaw.
Thank you. It's probably been, I don't know, 8 or 9 years since we had an engineer explain about the leachate, or however you call it, that's coming out of the junk, out of the dumps, and given us an overall view of what you actually do to earn these fees. Could you give us a very, very brief synopsis on what the engineering firm does to earn the $201,700? very brief.
Darren Steekel with Fairgram. I also am a Freeport resident, live at 1891 West Harrison. Alec is our hydrologist who is doing the day-to-days with the landfill, so I thought I'd bring him along to answer any kind of questions you like.
Brief synopsis, please.
Okay, so it's a little bit different in each landfill. So at landfill 4, well, both landfills involve groundwater sampling, so that's something we handle. Sorry, I'm more nervous than I thought I'd be standing up there.
That's okay.
I have a microphone, I'm not used to that. So we do groundwater sampling at both landfills. And then at landfill 4, we also do gas monitoring, and at both we monitor sort of the general state of the cover for the landfill. So there's certain the landfill the landfill cover has to be intact in order to stay. Sorry, deep breath.
Okay. Yep.
To stay in compliance with the EPA regulations. So basically, we just handle the day-to-day maintenance of the landfill, groundwater sampling. There's gas sampling at landfill 4. And then at landfill 2, 3, we have a leachate recovery system as well. So that's the garbage juice you were talking about, basically. Yes. So we've got a series of solar-powered pumps that intercept the garbage juice on its way out of the landfill. So I monitor that monthly for it's to keep track of its operations, make sure it's staying operational. And then a lot of what the groundwater sampling does is to make sure that that system is functioning as it's intended to stop the garbage juice from getting out of the landfill. So I think I covered the broad strokes of it. Sorry.
Follow up? Thank you. One of my questions is, as these age, is there less and less garbage juice leachates coming out of them? And can we expect the fees to get less and less each year as you have to sample less, or how does all that work?
Unfortunately, as being just a big pile of garbage, it's unfortunately not really going anywhere. So the leachate recovery system that we have in place right now is kind of holding things at a standstill. But realistically, it doesn't seem like that's going to be, it's not going to be completely remediated at any point because of the nature of the cap. Water is going to continue to percolate through there, pick up more garbage juice from the landfill, and then and head out. So unfortunately, it's probably not going to get. There's not going to be significantly less leachate over time.
One of the things that will be brought forward to the council this year is we actually do have a section of the leachate piping which we are going to have to do a repair on. We have indications that we may have a problem in one of the pound, and I think I may have mentioned that in an update that I had sent out to you on the landfill. So we do know that that's one of the things that's going to be coming. You'll see later on, and we do have that built into our capital plan.
We do.
As we go forward, the work that we have to do on the landfill. My experience too, which I will tell you. So the community I came from had closed their landfill in 1998, and they were still in 2017 when I left it. Every time we got down where we thought the leachate was good enough, IEPA lowered our standards even further and made us drill further sampling wells out, and then they'd come back and say, we want 5 more years of samples.
Madam Mayor.
Yeah. I'd like to give you a couple more comments. So one of the things that Alex didn't define is about $70,000 of our contract is just the sampling lab fees that are required as part of your permit. What he alluded to is the landfill monitoring is basically going to be indefinite to Freeport as long as that exists in that location. The EPA requirements are not going to be less, they're only going to be more. And we're monitoring it to make sure that the leachate is not leaving the site and it's staying where it's supposed to be. Part of Alex's routine monthly maintenance is also dealing with all the pumps that are out there and providing reports back to Dennis on any work that needs to be done. I know over the course of the last few contracts, some of the work was pulled back to the city. Some of it came back to us because it wasn't completed. We also had issues out there that were not taken care of before that now we're working directly with Dennis to make sure that those are addressed as soon as possible, and the city's providing staff to take care of those issues so we don't have to. So we really come into the reporting and compliance side for you, writing the assessments and the reports, and Alex's teams make sure that we're keeping the city abreast of it so we don't get fines. And the leachate monitoring, it's where it's supposed to be out there, but it is a cost that is going to be indefinite to the city as long as the landfill's at that site. Right now, the only issue that I believe we have going on is we're dealing with some caps that is indenting, and they have to be filled and seeded, which is really not the appropriate time to do it right now, but I know it's on Dennis's list to address when we can get out there. And then the outstanding issue is the lead age system that we've known about for a while, but the city really hasn't had the funds in place to deal with it, but we are going to have to deal with that this year. And we have to put a plan in place and get permits to do all that work.
I want to thank you for that synopsis. And there again, the council always is looking for a little education on how we're spending our taxpayer dollars. So that's why I thought it was necessary to have that explained. And Alex, you don't need to be nervous around us. We were all in your shoes at one time, and my mother always said, if you're going to speak to a large group of people, just look over them and pretend they're all naked. Might help.
Sorry, it's my first city council meeting.
Mayor?
Thank you.
Alderman Ross.
Okay, how far down, when you're monitoring the landfill out there, how far down into the ground do you go?
So, and that depends on the landfill. Landfill 2-3, we're mostly monitoring shallow soils. At landfill 4, we have some going down to the top of the bedrock. So the idea there is we want to make sure that the leachate is not going into the rock that we get our water from. So we have some down, I think the deepest one is at around 140 feet at landfill 4. So that's right at the top of the bedrock.
So, follow up, Mayor? So it wouldn't be near well water, shall we say?
The idea is that we're making sure that it's not going into well water. So the monitoring wells are sealed up to the top, so none of the leachate is going to be able to go down the monitoring well. We're just taking out the water from the rock to make sure that the leachate doesn't go in there.
Good, good. Thank you.
The caps and the lining should be preventing the leachate, and that's what our testing is showing, that it's not leaching off the site.
Thank you.
Mayor.
Alderman McClanathan.
Thank you. I'll be making a motion in just a second, but my understanding, 3 things. 1, it's mandated. 2, if I recall correctly, at one point, weren't we like 1 year away from being closed, but then the test came bad, and now we're in basically monitoring purgatory
Yeah.
for the foreseeable future.
What Lola alluded to is the exact truth is everybody's 1 year away till they get 1 year away, and then they're not.
Yeah.
I mean, that's,
Yeah.
like I said, the EPA regulations are never going to get less, and once you meet your goal, there'll be a new goal established.
All right, so I'll make a motion to approve the agreement.
Second it.
All right, we have a motion made by Alderman McClanathan, seconded by Alderman Ross for the approval of the agreement with Fairgram. Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll?
Berberay.
Aye.
Borneman.
Aye.
McClanathan. Ross.
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
Busker.
Aye.
Brashaw.
Aye.
And Meissick.
Aye.
The motion passes 8-0.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
gentlemen.
We appreciate the contracts.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And next is department head reports. Finance.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just want to inform the council that our auditors will be here next Tuesday and Wednesday to do some preliminary work, but their major work won't take place until March. That's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And community development.
Thank you, Your Honor. With us having the first, I guess, substantial snowfall of the year and some more in the forecast for the next few days, just wanted to take a moment to remind you of our snow and ice removal ordinance that calls for the removal of snow from sidewalk within 12 hours of cessation of any snowfall. And really, according to ordinance, sidewalk should always be clear of ice. And the guys were out looking for that today, and they will be the remainder of the week as well.
Thank you. Alderman Borneman.
Got our attention there. That's sidewalks that are kind of like public sidewalks in front of homes, not necessarily on private property exclusively.
The The way it reads is the owner and occupant of land abutting the street dedication or right-of-way upon which a sidewalk exists shall keep and maintain such sidewalk free and clear of ice and snow. And then it goes on to say such person shall remove snow from such sidewalk within 12 hours after cessation of any snowfall. So if your land abuts the sidewalk, you're responsible for that.
Thanks.
Mayor?
Alderman Ross?
Yes, can you tell me how we making out on those 7 properties we spoke about 2 weeks ago?
Is that the land bank properties?
Correct.
I believe the land bank board of directors is meeting later this month to make a decision on those.
The land bank meets on the 29th, board of directors, where we're going to review and vote on the properties. So that point, and the council's appointed as the member in that. So
Okay, and that follow-up, Mayor. I'm speaking of mainly the revitalization ones we were speaking of.
Yeah, that's the land bank ones.
All right, thank you.
Mayor,
Alderman McClanathan?
thank you. This is something that I don't mind if you need to get back to me on this number, but I know you about doubled your citations, inspections last year. I had a constituent ask me what percentage of those issues that are cited end up getting resolved, repaired, versus just fined or not done that. So if you don't have that number, that's fine. I just wanted to throw that out there because someone asked me about it.
Yeah, that'll require some research in iWorks and some calculations, but I can certainly look that up, send it to the city manager to distribute it.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, Public Works.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm gonna echo Director Zubkov's comments on the snow in the next few days. Looking like we got a pretty good chance for the next 3 days of anywhere between, from what I keep seeing, is 1 to 5. They're so precise on their forecasts. It's a little bit better than the 0 to 12 that I gave you last time, but I nailed it. The only other thing on the Public Works plate is we have a contractor in place to start the grading on the countryside detention basin. We've let him know that he can begin as soon as he'd like. So, little heads up.
Mayor.
Alderman McClanathan?
A question on, if folks looking on like the city text, we don't really, if somebody has an issue, the closest thing I see for reporting a problem is like street sweeping. If somebody's got an issue in regards to snow plowing, is that something where they can report something through city text? I suppose maybe it's more for Kurt, as I see him pulling out his phone here.
I see him pull his phone out.
Okay,
Yep. I mean, we can add something on iWorks for plows.
thanks.
Okay. Fire?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just wanted to report to the council, I received a verbal retirement notice from Jeff Hoster. He plans on retiring from the department on February 27th. I'll be seeking approval to replace him through the commission, and myself and the management team are working on a timing of replacement so that we can pace the replacement with the budget, so we're not overspending the budget for that. I want to praise my team for their response to modern plating. It was a very complicated incident, and as I said on the news, it was the largest hazmat incident I'd ever responded to in my 30 years in the fire service. And I want to thank Modern Plating for their assistance and helping us with their building and understanding their processes and helping us mitigate and respond to the emergency. They did a great job, including all the folks that helped us out. The Emergency Management Agency, the Salvation Army, Red Cross, the City Manager's Office, Sewer Department, all the team players were together to make sure that we were keeping Freeport safe. So good job, everyone. This morning we had a small fire at 1124 Saxby. Mattress child was playing with matches. No one was injured, and the residents were able to return to their home. And then this week also, the rest of this week, myself and 3 other members of the department are completing our coursework and testing for Blue Card Incident Command certification for structural firefighting. So it'd be nice to have that credential out of the way. That's all I have for you this evening.
Thank you. And police
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't have a report tonight.
and water and sewer.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to discuss a little bit along weather-related events, conditions. Over the past week, we've had some temperatures sort of in single digits overnight, and on the water and sewer page of the city's website, there's a document there that relates as to suggested practices so you don't have your pipes to go and freeze. And on a different note, today is Director Carr's birthday, and I want to publicly wish him a happy birthday.
As do we. Thank you. Director Sutman. And library.
Really quick, I'll jump on the weather bandwagon, is that the library is a warming center, so in these cooler temps, and if you're having any issues with your pipes, and you need to have a place to hang out for a little while with heat, electricity, and internet, you can come to the library. Thanks.
Question,
Yes.
what are the hours that the library is open for that?
We are open just our regular hours. So we have 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. on Friday, and 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Saturdays.
Thank you.
And assistant to the city manager.
The Regional Planning Council is hosting a local elected officials 2020 census training session on Tuesday, February 4th. So this is a save the date for you guys. They don't have official invitations out yet, but they'll be coming out pretty soon, and so we'll send them out. You're all welcome to go. It's 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. at the Regional Planning Council Center in Rockford.
Okay, thank you. On to city manager's report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I may be stealing your thunder here, but I know it was in the paper. Congratulations to Dovey. She has received her certification as a credentialed city clerk. So she finished that. I've been concentrating that over the last 2.5 years, so I want to congratulate her. Also congratulate Kurt. He has been accepted into the MIS, Masters of Information Systems at Springfield. It's a correspondence course. It's combined for local government. So he's actually working on both his credentialing as an IT director, government IT director, through the University of North Carolina, and also his master's. On the work side, initial review of health insurance. I'm going to a meeting to talk about, we are looking at an increase for the first time in 2.5 years in our health insurance. We are anticipating anywhere from a 3 to a 6% increase in our health insurance. We'll get more details at tomorrow's meeting. Our well house for the new treatment is up. Well house design has been completed. It's 90% complete, as we call 90%, and it's up for IEPA review to grant us a permit. They have 90 days to respond. We fully expect them to ask for an extension on that, but the goal is once we get that, is we'll go out to bid, and as much as the well is out to bid right now, as we're going forward, and then begin work in the fall on the well house, which is our new water treatment facility. So that's the plan. That is roughly a $10 million facility, and once we anticipate 18 months to 2 years to get that built. We'll talk more about it because it's going to impact the filters coming in due to their size and transportation. It may require us to do some work on the roads in the neighborhoods surrounding to transport them in. So it's a discussion we've already started to have about how we're going to get those filters in. But that's, it's exciting because once we get that, we may be able to start moving towards shutting down the oldest water treatment facility in the state. So, all right, that's all I have, Mayor.
And I just have one thing I wanted to remind the council that on Monday morning at 8:45, you are all invited to the 100th anniversary celebration at LK Manufacturing. So if your schedule's allowed, please come. Alderman Berberet.
Congratulations to Director Carr and your snow removal team and keeping the streets open team. Great job this time.
Alderman Borneman.
Nothing from me, thanks.
Thank you. Alderman McClanahan.
I just wanted to note, when you're talking about the accreditation and then with Kurt too here, it kind of highlights something that there's been an emphasis from the top in regards to having a very highly educated, highly professional, highly accredited leadership team here in regards to that. I appreciate it. I think it pays dividends for the work that we're seeing in regards to it. So thank you for that emphasis. I'm not going to start listing all the other ones because I'll probably miss some of it. I mean, I know many of you continued to have the education, the training, and again, I think it really pays off. So thank you for your investments in that.
Alderman Ross.
Excuse me. Yes, I'd like to congratulate all the city employees for the hard work that they were awarded for. That just shows they do care about the city, and that makes me feel really good. Now, getting back to modern planning, I want to thank Manager Crow for notifying me, which he notified everybody else though. But it's right at my back door, and I want to thank the fire chief and his men and everybody else that was there. That's pretty quick response. I think it was over with in 4 hours, and that's, you don't get no better than that. Thank you.
Alderman Parker.
Just one question for the chief. I've noticed driving around that looked like a lot of people were complying with the snow emergency ordinance, or when you put that out. Did you seem to have too many complaints on that?
No, we didn't. I don't believe we issued very many tickets either, so it went really, really well.
Looked good. Thank you.
Alderman Busker.
Nothing this evening.
Alderman Brashaw.
Thank you, Mayor. Congratulations again, Dovey, on your accreditation, and Kurt, on your acceptance into your program. And Dennis, thank you very much for keeping our streets clean and safe. The snow removal was it was more than adequate. And of course, with Manager Crow issuing the order to pre-salt the streets, I think that helped with some of the ice. Do you give Dennis that credit? And I will also give Dennis that credit for turning another year older today. So happy birthday from all of us. That's it.
Alderman Misick.
So just a reminder, Neighborhood Watch is tomorrow night, 6:30 p.m. at Central Fire. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is public comment. Tommy.
Thank Jody Moe. She does a good job, Mayor of
Tommy.
Freeport. And wanted to ask you, how's that Art Plaza update?
I don't have any updates right now, and nothing's really happening because of, it's winter.
And I want to tell Matt Summers, you did a good job being the police chief in Freeport.
Thank you.
And happy birthday, Carl.
More public comment?
Due to the time constraints preventing me from illustrating the full story on the 5G, I just wanted to leave you with one brief paragraph here. Currently, the Telecommunications Act of 1996 exempts the telecommunications company from liability for health hazards. However, this indemnification may not apply relative to 5G due to the thousands of independent studies and peer-reviewed papers on the danger of EMF radiation. Many of the telecoms investor syllabuses disclose the potential financial risks looming if health hazards emerge from 5G, especially because no insurance companies will provide liability insurance for any such future claims. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Any other public comments? Then we will move on to item number 23, which is executive session. Madam Clerk, could you please read this for the record?
Pursuant to 5 ILCS 120/2C2, collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees. Pursuant to 5 ILCS 122C11, litigation when an action against, affecting, or on behalf of the particular public body has been filed and is pending before a court or administrative tribunal, or when the public body finds that an action is probable or imminent, in which case the basis for the findings shall be recorded and entered into the minutes of the closed meeting.
Thank you. Is there a motion to enter into executive session?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion made by Alderman Busker, seconded by Alderman Meiseck. Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll on entering into executive session?
Berberay.
Aye.
Borneman.
Aye.
McClanathan. Ross.
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
Busker.
Aye.
Brashaw.
Aye.
And Meiseck.
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0.